Welcome to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lorianne Casdia. Our goal here at Healthy Lifestyle is to inspire, educate, and empower you to fulfill a healthy, emotional, spiritual, and physical life so you can feel empowered to live the life you have always wanted and dreamed. Today we have our good friend William Paul Young, the international best-selling author of The Shack and, more importantly, the grandfather of 12 grandbabies.
So far, that's what we got, 12.
Welcome, welcome. All under 12, I understand.
12 and under, yes. No teenagers yet, so we're doing great.
Yeah. Wait till you get to those teenager years. You remember that, right?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I was lost as a teenager, so, that part of my life was kind of a blur. That was all survival at that point.
Yeah. I think a lot of us went through not what you went through, but through a lot of that survival period where you're not sure who you are, what you want to be, where you're going to be. So I have a personal philosophy that we have our children till 10 to give them the rights and the wrongs. After that, we kind of guide them and stand by and just stay out of throwing shoes sight. And then we get them back because we become the dumbest people in the world about that time.
Sure.
And then we get them back around 19, 20 if we're lucky, 21. And
26 if they're men.
26 if they're men, true.
Yep.
And that's when we start to become a little bit more intelligent. And more importantly, that's when we start cleanup. Around 19, we become cleanup. So they'll make mistakes and we're there for security and cleanup. So that's the hard transition. There
is something that I think would be helpful and this shows some of my background and bias because I was raised fundamental, modern evangelical, Protestant Christian. I'm a missionary kid, preacher's kid, and they had this verse that they always quoted about raising kids, and it was the English was train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. That's how it was, said. And so everybody was looking for how do we train them up in the way they should go?
Right.
And so we had 6 kids. And so you're looking for the right template to try to fit your kids into, right?
Yeah.
And did they depart from the way they should go? One is you're supposed to know what the way they should go is. And then, and nobody helped you. So
no book.
No. So, but everybody was selling books about it. So it was Dare to Discipline or whatever. But the Hebrew actually is very different than that. The Hebrew is train up a child in their way. And when they're old, they won't depart from it.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's very lovely, which means
and more accurate.
You have to take the time to get to know what this child's way is. And of course, they won't depart from it when they're old if it's their way.
Yeah, well,
and what we try to do is force people into a box the way they should go.
Yeah.
Instead of being receptive to what their way is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We get pigeonholed, and then that's what we're known, and that nobody really knows who you are. And if you do that exploration and become genuinely you, which I am a huge proponent of, to become genuine, it's really hard to do that when everybody's trying to make you walk this line and tow this rope. So it's an interesting process. I hope our world gets a little kinder as far as allowing people to be who they are, because when we're the best people because we're being exactly how we were factory installed. And we come with everything we need. We just need a little guidance to unpack the box in a proper manner.
I think we are getting a little kinder. That is, I think that there's a lot of good things that are changing and a lot of rise in human consciousness, generally speaking, anyway.
I agree.
But I also think that one of the great losses of our Western culture particularly, and I grew up overseas, I grew up in a different culture. And one of the losses in this culture is the lack of multi-generational relationships that surround our kids. We had one great advantage, and that is that Kim's dad, I'm married to Kim. Kim's dad lived with us for 17 years. And so my children grew up with their grandfather. And when there were times where Kim and I did not have the bandwidth or the capacity to be present to our children, Willard was. And we all called him Willie. In fact, the Willie in the shack is Kim's dad.
Oh, okay.
And he's Mackenzie's friend. He's the one that helps guide Mackenzie from the outside. And Willie had my kids would all say with no hesitation, the three most significant people in their lives was their mom, their dad, and their grandfather. Yeah. And, but I'm a grandparent now, as you know, 12 kids. I have a capacity, and hopefully that's the direction we're all moving, is that when we get older, we have a capacity to be present in a way that we were unable to when we were younger, because it's not as much about us anymore.
Right.
And when it's not about you, then all of a sudden the other is allowed to show up, and you're present to see it.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're just concerned about yourself. You're concerned about how this makes you look, as parents, and so you're trying to get the kids into a box and all this. So we have 6 kids. One has a PhD in statistics. Wow. The next one works on scripts and graduated from Full Sail, which is, arts and theater and all that, film primarily. And then we have a son who's a mechanical engineer with an MBA who's a Portland police officer.
Wow.
I know. And then one who's studying forensic psychology, another one who has her undergraduate degrees in child development, and the other one's not sure yet because he's in his early 20s, or mid 20s now, and so his brain just got fully formed for one thing.
Yeah. Well, good news there.
Well, yeah. It just took a while.
Yeah, it's funny because I only have 2, but they're extremely different. Extremely different. One is more like me, and one is more like their father. Yeah. And it's just amazing. And you try to be a parent like we had parents, and you try to fit them in a box and use all the same rules, and it doesn't work. When I realized that way later in their lives, I started to adjust because I knew how one would react and how another one would react. And you really do have to be fluid with each of the children, because you're going to get a good result if you let them be the best that they can be. So that encouragement is important.
It takes creativity to be present to who they are. And you can't discipline 2 children the same. One will laugh at you and the other one, their whole world will fall apart.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Because of who they are. Yeah. And so this is the gift that we're given as parents, is the opportunity to be present to a human being for an extended period of time and allow them to change us.
Yeah, and they did. My sons made me definitely better. I'm so much better.
My grandbabies are still doing that to me.
Yeah, and I love it. It's opened my eyes. But, one of our problems as parents, especially when you have young ones, is you're still trying to figure out who you are and being present for yourself, needless to say, for other people. So that is an interesting balancing act. What are your thoughts on that?
So, and I think Richard Rohr would have a lot to say about the first half of life versus the second half of life. In his book, Falling Upward, he addresses this a lot. And, there's a lot. And here again, we've lost the multi-generational thing. So we're not getting the wisdom of people who have been there.
Right.
And so we're suddenly thrust into this. We have an actual human being that is connected to us, and we're trying to figure this out. And I'm still working on my own crap.
Yeah.
And so we tend to dump it on them while we're, Yeah. So and you can't even help it, really. And then then learning to ask for forgiveness and learning to admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
And beginning to be authentic about who you are, because initially your kids think you're God, and unless you're you could be a very abusive and a tyrannical God, which a lot of us grew up with anyway. But in terms of our parents, they kind of represent the universe to us.
Yeah.
And so I thought the way that my parents were the way that all parents were.
Yeah. Why would you think anything otherwise? That was the only version that you've ever seen.
Yeah. So and then you start meeting, you start meeting other kids, and you're watching their relationship with their parents, and it's like, something doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I'm with you that there is a lot about this where And you know, the part of the beauty of children is that if you're honest and authentic and you ask for forgiveness and you do those things, they're incredibly graceful.
Yes.
You know, they will extend forgiveness way easier than adults tend to.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on tradition? I love tradition, and I think that goes back to the multi-generational. It's real important to me. Tradition is more important to me, and making memories with my kids was really important because those memories became tradition. So going out to get the Christmas tree for us and certain things that were family things that we did together. And then I see my kids doing it themselves now as they're grown-ups.
Yeah.
And so
we had Wee Willie he was a leprechaun that came from Ireland a week before Valentine. I mean, a
Easter?
week before. No. What's the Irish celebration?
Oh, St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. So a week before St. Patrick's Day, and we had like 5 families that did this, right? And so these little rascals, you know, they wouldn't do anything that was harmful, but they definitely played pranks. And they would show up a week ahead, and all of a sudden the milk would turn green. All of a sudden, you know, things would just start to happen. And pretty soon the kids were finding stuff that we didn't do, but, you know, just happened to, you know, and they're blaming the leprechauns, and Wee Willie was ours. And then they talked to each other, and we'd always told them that, you know, they don't visit people who don't believe that they exist.
Oh, true. Yeah, true.
So they'd go to school, you know, and they'd find out that people didn't believe in leprechauns. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, they don't come visit you. And we get a phone call from a friend of ours who's a neurosurgeon. And he goes like, so my son came home from school, and what's this thing about leprechauns? So we tell him, and he just is all in, right? Yeah. I mean, he's just pretty soon. I mean, one of our kids during the night, the leprechaun actually saran wrapped him to a bed and removed all the furniture from his room. I mean, it's so funny.
That was a naughty leprechaun.
Oh, funny. Oh, it was so great. And I remember when Lexi turned 6 and at one point she 7, maybe she was 7. She comes up, she says, all right, tell me the truth. Are leprechauns real? And Kim goes, well, if you believe they are. She goes, nope. Are you the leprechauns? Right? She's figuring this all out. And Kim goes, yes. She goes, oh, I've never been so humiliated in my whole life.
Oh my God.
And then she goes, and then she became part of the leprechaun team because as soon as they got old enough to figure it out, you know, and she had one sibling that was younger than, so she's in, you know, and so leprechauns have been a part of our history forever. And sure enough, you know, they've shown up down the path for the kids as well. I
love that. I knew, you know, my kids knew things and stuff like that, but they wouldn't ask. And then one day my youngest said to me, Mom, I want you to tell me the truth. He takes my face in his hand with both hands. He goes, no, I want you to tell me the truth. Probably something I've done to him a number of times. And I looked at him and I said, well, what do you think? And he goes, well, I think they are. And I said, well, that's all that matters, because what you think is all that matters. Uh-huh. And that's where I was able to, you know, teach him that what anybody else thinks is of no business to him. It's only what he thinks. And as long as he has good intention and he's doing the right thing, that's all good. And he was so thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled with that answer. And he went back down, and I heard him tell his friend outside, I told you. And he just and his friend had the most perplexed look on his face.
Sure.
He thought he had figured everything out. So it was fun. So you're going to be at this event, this spiritual awareness seminar and charity event on November 9th.
Correct.
You went last year. You were the main keynote speaker. Absolutely brilliant. That's when I got to meet you face to face and just fell in love head over heels with my friends. You're such a delightful human being. And you're going to talk about being human. What do you talk about? What do you mean by being human?
There's a big word in philosophy and theology and all that. Ontology is the word. Okay. And it comes from the Greek word ontos, which means being, B-E-I-N-G. And so there's a definition of wholeness that goes like this. Wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being. Right? Yeah. Wholeness is when the way of your being, how you live your life, matches the truth of your being. And not truth just because you believe it, or that's, you're being convinced that leprechauns are real.
Right.
Truth that is actually true. Truth that you can trust.
Right.
Not just believe in your head.
Right.
That you can participate as a person in regard to. So just leprechauns, they're not real in that sense. They're real in a mythological way, in a metaphoric way. They serve a purpose, but they're not like love. Love is actually true.
Yeah.
Right? And it's true whether you want to believe in it or not. It's true now your participation in love is going to be dependent on whether you can trust love or not.
Right.
Yeah. So wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being, which then begs the question, what's the truth of your being? And that's what we're going to unpack. So how do we begin to understand what the truth of our being is, so that the way of our being can match it? And a lot of times, the best way to look at that is to look at all the things that have impinged upon the truth, all the lies that we have been told and believed along the way. And they could be personal ones. Because abuse will tell you a version of the truth of your being that is actually a lie. But if that's what you believe about yourself, you will experience life like that.
Belief is a thought that you think over and over again. That's what a belief is. Right. So you can change your beliefs. And so
right. But are you exactly. And what's the basis to change it? Yeah. Why would we believe in forgiveness as opposed to unforgiveness? Why wouldn't we gravitate toward betrayal as a value? Right? And so what are the underlying things about the divine, for me, because of my tradition, about Trinity that are true? Right. And am I made in the image and likeness of that, or what I've been told or experienced?
Right.
Or been taught to even by my religious tradition. Because my religious tradition communicated things about the truth of my being that I now believe are absolutely false.
Yeah, well, that's why I migrated from being religious, because I was brought up very Catholic, Christian. Mm-hmm. And I've migrated to being very spiritual, because it's about in here and having good intent and living life with all the wonderful thing in life. I think bad feelings, jealousy and hate and stuff, I think that's man-made. That's certainly not godly. I think godly is the joy that we're supposed to have, because I believe we're supposed to just be joyous every day. And that's where you manifest all the goodness that comes into you. So I think we've spoken about this before, the two camera lenses. So we have the one camera lens where you can look at the day and everything is just, oh my God, it's just horrible. And you have the other camera lens where you look at the same thing and go, all right, it's a challenge. Let's see how I'm going to get through it. And let me see what I'm going to learn from it. And that just brings a different kind of an attitude and a joy that you're going to power through it. And I think when you do that and you find the happiness, I think that is that truth of our being, because I think that's where we're supposed to be, because we feel good. If it feels good, in the soul, in the heart, I think that's where we're supposed to be. That's who we are. That's when we're being the person we're supposed to be. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I have an issue with intention.
Okay.
Because there's a saying that, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
True.
Okay.
True.
So it's got to be more than just intention. It has to actually be true.
Yeah.
Right? Because something has to be able to judge in a right sense the intention. Because people who built religious systems that turned out to be incredibly abusive didn't do it with false intentions. They did it with the best of intentions, oftentimes.
Okay. I would say oftentimes I would agree with. I was like, really? Always? I don't know about that.
No. I wouldn't say always.
I do think it's a mechanism of control. Because if you look at the Bible, they say things, and it's funny, very young, I only got tossed out of class once. And it was out of catechism class once. And it was out of because I asked too many questions. I was just like, it doesn't make sense. God is about love. God loves you. God forgives you. God, all this wonderful stuff. But God wants you to fear. That I could not compute that. It just didn't work for me. So I started asking a lot of questions to the nun and just annoyed the heck out of her. And she threw me out, which made my mother roar. It was all she could do to keep a straight face when she came to pick me up. Because, the head nun had called her and said, you need to take her home now
and train her up in the way that she should go.
Yes, really. Teach her something. Yeah. My mother was hysterical.
Yeah. So, and again, in the tradition, you've got kind of a polarity in terms of the presentation of the character of God, because you have another passage that'll say there is no fear in love. Right. There is no fear in love.
Right.
And so what's going on here? Well, because people don't know the truth of God's being even, right? They're conflicted about that, and they don't know the truth of their own being. So the way of their being, they're trying to cover up the fact of what they actually believe about themselves. When you're told by abuse, and you're told by poverty, and you're told by loss, and by bullying, and by being the victim of predatory behavior and all that, all of those things whisper to you that the truth of your being is that you're worthless, that you don't matter, you don't belong, you're not enough. All the I am nots.
Did you believe all that?
I didn't believe all of it, but I believed a lot of it. And I was conflicted about it. But, my relationship with my dad, for example, was very tumultuous, and he was a very abusive disciplinarian. Partly that's true because of his own history, which I didn't know as a child. All I knew was what I had to do to survive in the onslaught. And but what he communicated to me was how much I didn't belong and how worthless I was. Plus, we had a theology that backed him up.
Yeah.
Doctrinally. We didn't have a Jesus that backed him up. And so, but we kind of had a God the Father that backed him up.
Okay.
And so I ended up with this conflict in the very being of God between the omni-being behind Jesus, who Jesus came to save me from.
Right.
Who was much more like my dad. that omni-being, right? Watching from the infinite distance of a disapproving heart.
Right.
And so it took a lot of years for me to unravel the multitude of lies that had been not only communicated to me through the doctrines and theologies of the religious system I grew up in. And I got a lot of good things from my religious traditions and stuff like that. Speaking of
Sure, we all did.
But
you take the best of, right?
Well, when you're young growing up inside that world, you take it as the truth.
Sure.
And even if it's conflicting, and I got in trouble too, like you, for asking questions. So
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
My voice gets stolen.
Yeah, they try to mute you, and I think a lot of the things, the contradictory things, are the elements to try to keep us small. Because if we actually believed all the goodness that we were, this world wouldn't be the way it is right now. It'd be a lot calmer and a lot more loving, because we would all be very calm in ourselves, and we wouldn't be sitting there trying to make other people feel smaller. We would be lifting each other's up. And I can just imagine what we could all do if we were all in that space. But looking at the truth in your being, I grew up with a dad who was a very big disciplinarian. Went to Catholic, went to church every Sunday. God forbid you didn't get up. I mean, I had to be dead, bleeding, and dying in order to not go. That we would drag in there, and that was fully gloved, hat, the whole 9 yards. I mean, real old school. And I was very frightened of my dad, although he was he still is the most important man alive, but he's not anymore. He's my angel now, but he's just like the smartest man I've ever known and the kindest soul ever known. But I was still afraid of him because he had a very strict way about him. And a lot of the stuff that he was giving me were tools to allow me to walk through and ask all the questions, because he did encourage the questions, but the questions got me in trouble. But he gave me very strong principles that will put me up against society, because I was told that you do your best and you will be rewarded. And I found in real life, you do your best, it doesn't matter, it's who you knew. And you weren't rewarded. So I was very conflicted and very disappointed. And then finally, I remember the day that I sat there and when it wasn't Dad telling me the wrong thing. It was the world defying how it really should be. So, and then another thing that came along, someone said, because I just like bucked up against it, I refused to lose my inner child. And I was like, I don't want to lose that person. I like that person a lot. And I held on to her dead through all kinds of...
Good for you. Wasn't my experience.
Oh my gosh. Through all kinds of very harsh situations and a lot of betrayal. And I held on to that little girl, that positivity, because I knew that it was just not right. And I could see the glimmer of goodness in that one person, even though everything else was dark, painting a picture, dark and you just saw a lot of just clouds all around them. I still saw that little spark of light in that person. And that's what I hung on to for dear life. And I think maybe it was me reflecting that I was holding on to my inner child with dear life, saying, no, you're not going to take this away from me. So I'm wondering, through it all, in the back of your head, because you're so enlightened, in the back of your head while you were going through all this, in the back of your head, were you having that same kind of fight? Saying, no, it can't be right.
The little child was so dishonored, and sexual abuse will do that, I don't know there's anything that tears the basic fabric of a human soul apart like that. And so it got buried, and I ended up trying to be an adult in my mind, and it took a long time for that child to be resurrected. Yeah. I have a friend of mine, and he is in Australia. He's a young man named David Tensen, Tensen, right?
Yes.
And David, I sent him a note one time. I met him in Melbourne, and that's where we got to know each other. And I sent him a note one time, and I said, "Hey, I got a great idea for a poem that you should write." And I said, he said, "Well, what?" And I said, "All I know is the title, and the title is Who Took Your Voice?" Right? That's how it started. Within a few hours, he sent me 3 poems called "Who Took Your Voice," and I'm gonna find one of them and read it for you, because
please,
I think that you will love this, and I think you'll have a special resonance too. I think. Who took your voice with all its tone and volume and beauty of pain and joy and expression of you? Who took your voice with all its color and silence and pauses of rhythm and pace and music of you? Who took your voice when you exhaled to show and tell of trauma and secret and treatment of you? Did it remain inside? Was it muffled outside, dismissed, minimized? Was it met with contempt by those with too much to lose and too little to give? Come now, one word at a time. Like the healed leper, it's time to take up your voice and talk.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have to find that. That's absolutely beautiful.
You can find it on David Tensen, TENSEN.com.
Okay. I will look for that, because that absolutely encompasses everything. It really does.
Yeah.
You are listening to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lori-Ann Casdia. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lori-Ann. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas on topics and guests you'd like to hear more about, please send us an email at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. Also, follow us on social media at Healthy Lifestyle with LA. We love having your emails and respond to them as quickly as possible, and appreciate you following us. So please send us comments, and we'll talk to you as soon as we can.
it's just amazing. And it's funny, like you, I fought it back, and I came back, and I believe very strongly we're here to learn. Obviously, we're here to serve. And I found, and I didn't know I was doing it. I just realized it in the last 10 years. Yeah. But I turned around and I became an advocate, a very strong advocate for others. It was easier to do that than to advocate for myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not a good advocate for myself. I'm a stringent advocate for other people. And it's funny because I sit there sometimes and I speak to my mentor or my friends, and they're like, Lorianne, what would you advise your client or your or your friend if they told you the story you just told them? And I'd be like, you're out of your mind, you need to get out. But and they were just like, what? And I said, well, it's easier to do that than to actually do it yourself.
Right. That's why we can't do this on our own.
Yeah.
We have to have community in order to come to wholeness.
Yeah. And that's where I think we lose in the lack of the generations. I think that loss of the lack of generations has given us a place where we don't have somebody we can confide in. So that's why the mentoring, the coaching, the psychologist, whatever works for you, just do it. Just do it.
Find somebody, even if you have to pay to trust them.
Yeah.
And some that you can take the risk of trust.
Yeah.
And this child thing, when the Shack first came out, I got this email from Leanne Stewart, who's a writer in Nashville. And she said to me, I don't know anything about you. I don't know who you are. But my sense is that Missy, the 5-year-old who was abducted, that Missy represents something murdered in you as a child, probably your innocence. And Mackenzie is you as the adult trying to deal with it. And I showed that to Kim, and she said, boy, she nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even in that storyline, I'm both Mackenzie and Missy, and I'm trying to recover the child.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like a resurrection. I really marked the year I turned 50 as the year I finally became a child, one that I had never known how to be. Because you get some of the abuse stuff when you're really, really small. The child's gone. You're all in survival mode. You're trying to figure out how to be an adult in a world where you have no capacity to do that.
Right. And fly under the radar, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything becomes like you're not creating a facade in order to be a fake human being. You're creating a facade to survive. And it's because you think that's what they want. And you're so desperate to belong and so desperate to have somebody see you.
Yeah.
That you'll even give them a false persona rather than be entirely absent from their view.
Yeah. Why is it that we have this terrible need to get external validation when?
Because we're designed for it, not in terms of external validation, but in terms of community. The validation of community. I mean,
we're part of something, you mean?
We need someone to speak the truth to us when we can't see it for ourselves about who we are.
Yes.
Right? And aloneness is such the big enemy in all of this. Everything that is wrong will drive, and I'm not talking about solitude. For me, solitude is when I'm alone with, Trinity. So the smallest group I'm ever in is 4, right? But aloneness is the delusion that nobody sees me.
Yeah.
Right. And everything that is
crowd, right.
Say again.
You can be alone in a crowd. Feel alone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so everything that is wrong, everything that is hurtful, drives you in the direction of aloneness. So lying will drive you in the direction of secrets. Shame absolutely drives you toward aloneness. I mean, shame will so create an illusion of aloneness that you cannot even look up from the floor. And you will create a space in which you are entirely alone.
Yes.
And we're having a rampant increase in suicide these days.
Yes.
Right? And it's fundamentally this issue of aloneness that's at the core. And it's like, we have to find a way to penetrate that.
Well, we're made to do alone, because we do talking through these devices to each other while we're sitting next to each other. It's just craziness. We don't know how to communicate anymore. Forget about being community. And, I seek out people when I meet them first, because I feel like you're one of my tribe, because as soon as we met, I felt that there was an automatic connection. There was just this something. And I seek those people where I get that something, because it makes you just feel this surge of energy, this joy that comes to you. And I think that's what they're lacking, is that, and with the bullying platforms of social media, I call that the bullying platforms.
Sure.
It's so easy to manipulate people without even being there, not even realizing how to the depths that you're hurting this other person.
There is no excuse ever or no justification for being unkind.
Agreed.
Ever.
Agreed.
Right. And so, but love is never done in a vacuum. It's always done with an other. So is the growth. A child that comes into the world comes with, genetics and all of those kinds of things. They're not just a tabula rasa like the philosophers thought for a while. But the formation of that child and that child's beginning perceptions about what is the truth of their being is formed inside of a community of relationships.
Yeah.
We're designed for relationships. And so there is a longing. And I think here's a good thing. I think that we can look at the deepest longings and begin to have a sense of what true truth is, that which is absolutely true. Our longing to be authentic. I mean, it is an overwhelming internal longing. It's just that we're so scared that if we're authentic, we will be punished for it. And we have been.
Yes.
Right? And that's why we withhold ourselves from one another.
But are we more comfortable? I know I am when I'm being genuine.
But we don't know that if that hasn't been your experience.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's true. So how does one find the truth of one's being? Because I can't believe that my truth is the same as your truth.
Oh, I can.
Oh, it is?
Well, if it's not, we're in big trouble.
Because it's all based in love.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So we share, and here's the connection, I think, is that it's not just that we have arbitrary truth, but it's grounded in something that is ontologically real. It's true that it's true that it's true that it's true. And so to use my tradition's language, you are made in the image and likeness of a God who is love, who is good, who is kind, who is generous of heart, who is forgiving, who is present, who is relational, who is right. And you begin to go down this understanding of divinity and go like, my heart resonates to that. Yes. My experience doesn't say that. And so it's like, so what am I going to believe about the truth of my being? Is that I'm a piece of crap trying to become something good? Or that I'm made in the image and likeness of good and love and kindness? Changes everything. To use like the scriptures talk about the fruit of the Spirit, which would be the Holy Spirit, which would be the Spirit of God or the Spirit of divinity or the Spirit of love. However you want to couch it in terms of language that you're comfortable with. These things are patience, purity of heart, kindness, goodness, fury at everything that is hurtful to the ones you love, right? Yes. Which I think is a very important piece of all this. Yes. I think a lot of times people, they think love doesn't have teeth. Love is incredibly ferocious.
Yes.
On behalf of the one you love, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, so
you put yourself in danger for the one that you love.
Yeah. And if we don't have a centrality of truth around which to ground our relationships, that I'm going to create an us and them. I'm going to say, you just don't have it. You're just like, you're ontologically not there. So as soon as you can change your behavior, then you can get in the in-group, right? Then we try to modify behavior to change our ontology rather than have a revelation on the inside about our ontology and then understand that the way of our being will match the truth of our being.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me give you an example. So I was addicted to porn. Porn is a disaster. Porn is the imagination of a relationship without the risk of a real one.
Right.
Right? It is self-love through imagery.
Right.
Right? And I say a lot of times that infatuation is not real love because it's based on not knowing. So therefore, infatuation is relational porn, right? Because you don't want to know that person. In fact, as you get to know them, all of a sudden, all those emotions and everything starts to fade away.
Yeah.
Which means that the love wasn't real to begin with. It was you needing an object through which to find that sense of self-gratification, right?
Yep.
And that's not wholeness, that's hurt. And so here I am, I'm addicted. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try, and I hated it. I mean, I hated the addiction, hated it. You beg God, you try to be afraid of hell enough to change, whatever the system is, right? And then, so what do? You don't have anything on the inside that you think is of any value in order to be different than you are, because you've been told you're a piece of crap your whole life, Yeah. And so what do? You try to say, well, maybe if I can just get enough self-discipline or accountability group or something external that can then modify my behavior, right? Which lasts maybe a day or two or whatever, depending on how broken you already are to begin with.
Yeah.
But I haven't had an issue with it for almost 30 years. Why? You're made in my image and likeness.
Yeah.
And I am pure of heart. And it was the internal revelation of the truth of my being, not just because I thought it was true. Because if I'm stuck there, then it's just like positive thinking if I can just think of myself that way enough, right?
Right.
And that'll last us. Those of us who are broken, we can't play that game, Yeah. So there's got to be something that is true, that is true, that is true. And so here I am, and I'm suddenly beginning to trust that the truth of my being is that I'm pure of heart, because I'm made in the image and likeness of a God who is pure of heart, and that I am a child of that God, like every single human being on this planet or who has ever been conceived, right? And once I begin to see that, all of a sudden the way of my being changed. Because if I think I'm a piece of crap, all I'm trying to do is cover it up by changing my behavior. And I don't care how much positive thinking that I can do. Underlying is this niggling sense, you're still a piece of crap. They're still going to find out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, but
good luck with that.
Yeah. Therein lies where you started to play, right? Where you started to act a certain way every time you were in a certain room. And
well, I became a different thing to every single different audience, right? I didn't live from the inside out. I lived from the outside in, because nothing on the inside was okay.
I showed the world what the world wanted to see, as opposed
So if I met you, so if I met you, my question would be, who do you need me to be for you so that you can see maybe even a piece of me? But that's the imagery of the shack, right? It's the house on the inside that people helped us build. Yeah. And for a lot of us, it's a shack. It's not a habitable place. And that's where we stored our addictions and our secrets and everything else. Yeah. And then do I want to invite you in to see what I think is the truth of my being? Hell no, because I am terrified that if I actually look up and look in your eyes, I will see the look of disgust on your face that I see in the mirror. Yeah. And so it's like, no, I need to have a sense of what you need me to be, and I'm going to try to do that. And so we end up losing a sense of self in order to create all these avatars for whoever the audience is.
Well, it's a lot easier to do that than to risk showing them who you really are, or, be vulnerable.
We think it's easier.
Yeah. I think it's easier now.
We think it's safer, actually.
It's really easier to be genuine, and life is a lot easier and comfortable, and it just flows, and it's more joyous. when you are who you are and you're not fighting it anymore. I lost myself for many years, and it was such a wonderful rediscovery to find myself again. And I'm okay with that. And not everybody's okay with it. I'm okay.
It's a wonderful rediscovery if you're willing to go through hell to get there.
Yes, and I was.
Yeah, and me too.
Yeah,
it was really out of desperation.
Yeah, it was out of desperation for me too. The other was not a choice. And I had, it's like anything else. You have two choices, yes or no, right or left, right or wrong. It wasn't a choice anymore. I wanted to be that person because I knew she's in there. I was very connected with her. Yeah. I was just protecting her with all these walls. And I went, no, I'm done.
You were way ahead of me, because mine wasn't the choice between that. Mine that was the choice between the desperation to find a way to change or kill myself. That was it. Mine was nihilism on the one hand, because I couldn't live with continuing to hurt people. Yeah. That's what I couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so it was like, how? And the journey required that the lies get exposed, that my secrets got exposed.
Yeah.
Right?
Took that risk.
And that I came to use the biblical language, that I left my love of darkness and came into the light, and it burned the hell out of me. Yeah. And I am grateful every day now. Yeah. But I would never want to go through that journey again.
No, but I'm very grateful that I had mine. I always call it, I call it that day I figuratively leapt off of my house, the roof of my house, and burnt it down, because I just changed everything. I went, nope. And I just sent everything away. And I basically isolated myself and did the rebuilding from the inside out.
I pulled the yellow pages off the shelf and looked under counselors and started with the A's and worked my way down until I found something that looked like a possibility. And I called up total strangers, and for the first time in my life, I said, "Can you help me?"
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a long journey, but it's so worth it once you get to the other side.
From this side, it's just like, yes, it's worth it. No, let me read you another David Tensen poem, and it's called "Dear Breakdown." Yeah,
yeah,
and it says, "Dear Breakdown, when I saw you coming over the horizon, I braced myself with your strong gaze and constant gait. I began to suspect you were on assignment, or I had summoned you unknowingly. I'd seen what you've done to others. Their lives resembled wrecks. Many lost hope and all sense of pride, and you were coming for me now, and I was unprepared. Sure, these people recovered and discovered that they couldn't arrange galaxies with their false personas, but who wants to go through hell for that lesson? And yes, some claimed they loved deeper and laughed louder and found their true selves. But who wants to submit to your painful ways? So much in me told me you were not welcome. Too many memories of failing and falling had me questioning your nearness once more. But then you had your way. I expected you to hit and run, but you were more committed than that. I had you all wrong. Sure, it hurt, and sure, I died many deaths, but you allowed me to see that I was never in charge, never that strong, never going to wake up to the presence of all things unless you came to my rescue. So thank you, Breakdown." That says it.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you've been through it, it's so very clear.
That's why I love the line, religious people believe in hell, but spiritual people have been there.
Yeah, yes. Isn't that the truth?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's the truth.
So with that, I would say I'm so looking forward to seeing you on the 9th.
Oh, can't wait for a big hug. Thank you.
Can't wait. You're just, you're a gift, you're a dream, you're a love. I will tell you, from knowing you, you are the most wonderful human being I've met.
Right back at you.
Right down to the soul. And that comes from your hug and from your eyes and just from just being around you. You have this aura about you that's just so lovely. And so thank you for sharing that with all of us and being in my life and our lives. So you're a real gift. So.
Wow. You know what's really cool? all I do is get to be myself. And you understand that.
I do.
I know. It's the easiest thing I know how to do. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought it? And look at how many lives and hearts you're touching. And it's a beautiful thing what you do. So I look forward to seeing you.
And right back at you.
Thank you so much for being on Healthy Lifestyle.
You're very, very well. I'm very honored.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle. My heart is lifted by sharing this time with you. As we always say, remember, do a little something for yourself every day. It starts there. It doesn't have to be big, but definitely take a moment, do something for yourself every day. Create a habit. Create that new balance. Thank you again for joining us on Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lori-Ann Casdia. Until next time, show up for you and show up big.